Okay, and yeah, hello to another rambling. Even though I have to say I'm still not 100 at 100%, I'm still quite sick. But yeah, it's definitely well enough, and I'll get better. It's already better on a good level. So yeah, but what I actually have to say, and I'm completely exhausted by now, so you'll definitely notice this that I'm not as excited maybe as I was on the German take, but that's just because that one was about 1 hour and 10 long, and it was after all with this light here and talking all the time, and I am just woke up not that long ago. I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and since I'm sick, all that, so I'm tired. So just keep that in mind. Okay. My last rambling was about 10 days ago, but I still wanted to make one just because tomorrow I'm on my way to the Google event, and then I won't post a few videos for the next few days, which I haven't so much the last week just because I was sick and the timing and so on wasn't quite right and so on. But yeah, what I want to also let you know though, and I think this might be maybe not quite the last rambling that I'm gonna do on English, because I'm just getting to that in a few minutes, but they won't be maybe a regular thing. I won't make maybe every rambling in German, because especially one thing that I've noticed, they are getting longer and longer. The last one, or a few weeks ago, it was like 40 minutes, and it got 50 minutes, and this one was 1 hour and 10. And I'm pretty sure the English version won't be that long, just because I don't have the energy in me to get that long into it, especially since I can't get into everything that I did in the German part once again in the English part. Like the same thing, it was also the case on the English parts and back later on in German in the future when I did the English ones before. And the reason is the following: they are getting so long, and it's very hard to kind of get them similar in a way, especially on that length. I have the same topics, but at some point I just lose track of what I already said in the German one or already in the English one and so on. I don't want to repeat myself too much, because I actually hate YouTubers that do those kind of live streams and ramblings and so on and get over the thing over and over again, and you hear things like 10 times over the whole stream. And I still repeat myself actually quite a lot, but not in that amount that some others do, and I just can't get it. So I rather just don't do it again, or just skip complete topics by these days. So, and I had to kind of set one priority, and it's just the German rambling, because that one gets a lot more interaction. I get more views, I get more, okay, maybe not actually more likes, but way more comments, and that's the important part. So also in the cases of where I was a little bit down, or where I needed some motivation, or when something wasn't maybe all that great, I got way more motivation from their side, so a lot more positive feedback and so on. I of course, from, and I know it's not quite fair to the very regular and hardcore rambling viewers on the English part, but I know it's not just fair, but I got, of course, from those also that motivation and so on. And that's the reason why I'm still actually doing this today. But yeah, what I get though, yeah, I get more dislikes on the German ones, but it's fine. There are just more jerks on the English side, or haters. Oh, I don't know. So this is definitely less of a thing on the English ones, but I totally get it if it would happen now, because some feel a little bit salty because I favor one group over the other. But I think it's just natural that you give the priority to the one that you just get more back from. And I know it's not huge. It's not like I get 10,000 views on the German one and 1,000 on the English one, which actually is more the case the other way around on my reviews. So it's a little bit different by now, but I have so many videos where the ratio from German ones to English videos is like 1 to 10 or even way higher. Now these days it's not that extreme anymore, so I have like 40% of German viewers by now. So it's not, but specific videos, especially headset reviews or keyboard, maybe not so much, but some specific reviews definitely get way more views on the English side. So some might say, why don't you just skip the German ones? And I've said this already so many times. I just need the German videos. By now I also, with 40%, it definitely makes worth it, but I got so many contacts due to making German videos, since I am here in Germany, through German press agencies, German shops and so on. So it just makes sense, because if I would just rely on the English portion of this channel, I would have way less access to devices and so on. So it's a little bit weird because from the English part I get way more views, which definitely makes still the biggest part, and more comments and more likes in general. And the German ones are still kind of by now the actual part that carries the channel, because I would not have access to things like Cyberport, the import shops, Gearbest, but actually somewhere yes, because Gearbest, through Gearbest, the amount of the devices I sell through those links, 90%, 95%, as I said, is done through German views. I'm not quite sure why, because the views are way higher on the US side, on the English speaking side, but I don't really sell through those links. And it's like I explained already once in the past, and I sound very kind of chopped up when I talk, but actually someone asked me if I'm a retard. I talk like an artist. I don't know, and I know sometimes if I don't know quite what to tell, it sounds very chopped up and not really smooth, but yeah. Yeah, but like I said, the problem is, and I've said this already a few times in the past, that if I sell a device for $300, I get about $100 that I can spend on the next device to get a review on it, and this money would not be there if not for the German viewers. So, because if I would just rely on the non-German viewers, so the people who watch and then buy something through the English link, you would not see reviews of the Xiaomi Mi Note 3. You would not see reviews of a Xiaomi Mi Air 12, 13 or whatever. You would not see those, because I would maybe just get the cheap stuff, because I make, like I said, 90-95% through the German links. So yeah, I think it's kind of understandable, even though it might not be fair. But let's actually get to the first proper topic. The Google event. I'm tomorrow on my way. The problem is I'm still not fully recovered yet. I'm still very, very exhausted and so on. That's a little bit of a problem, because I will drive there, and it's a 600-kilometer drive, about that, maybe a little bit more. So depending on the traffic, 6-7 hours of driving. This will be very exhausting, especially since I can't really sleep well before those events when I have to get there and so on. And yeah, it will be very exhausting. That's a bit an issue. I would have liked to have been fully recovered, because right now I'm well enough, but I'm not really there yet so to make a review today, because I tried it yesterday on the Xiaomi Mi Mix 2, and I noticed once I made those 2 takes, which were both about almost 25 minutes long, I was totally exhausted. I was completely tired, just because I'm sick. My energy just isn't there. So I'm doing my best to even make videos if I'm not really fit, but sometimes I just have to accept it. I'm done. And it wasn't the case in the 4 years that I make YouTube already, and I wasn't actually sick for about 6 years already, or even longer, because I generally don't get sick, and that's why I don't like it. And I may be a little bit softer in some ways, but yeah, I'm sick since Saturday. Today is Tuesday, but I'm on my way back. Usually it's always for me like this. First day it starts to show, it starts to get worse. The second day is pretty much always already the worst day for me. And on the third day and fourth day, I recover way better. So fourth day is usually where I am good enough to be okay. I still have some things like a bit of headache, clear throat, my nose is still running and so on, but it's not that it really handicaps me. But yep. But getting back to the topic, the Google event, let's actually quickly cover. Today actually will be a little bit more of a tech topic focused rambling, which is usually not the case. I will have some not quite so tech-focused topics a little bit later on, but let's get to the few ones that I usually don't do on ramblings. The Google event. What are we gonna see? I will get into Pixels quite soon, but first of all, Google Home and Google, so it's the small one and the Mini and the Max. I gotta say, I've never used Google Home. I only use an Echo Dot, and I have to say I use it quite limited, because someone actually asked me if I could review both of them and show what I'm doing with them. But I said that I used it so limited it wouldn't make much sense, because all I do with the Echo is, for example, I set timers, I use it as an alarm clock. Actually, I wanted to use it as a reminder more often, because it's quite handy to do. But the problem is that if you set a reminder and you miss that, if you're just not in the room or somewhere else and you didn't get that message, you just don't know of it again. I've missed already so many reminders because I just didn't hear them. I wasn't there, and then it's pretty much useless. You maybe see it on the Alexa app or the Amazon Echo app, but I really don't know. I didn't really check. But what it should actually do, in my opinion, if there is something like a notification left, a reminder, it should show that. And what do phones usually use? Not so much anymore. They use like a notification LED, and we have this LED. So I think what the Echo should do is, if you have a reminder or something and you've missed it, so you didn't say stop or anything, it should kind of just glow so you know there is something missing. Because I think you should actually, because a reminder is something that happens and then it's gone. But what I think you should do is kind of confirm that you got the message, because it just says the reminder and then it's already done for Alexa, and then she thinks all is good. But she should kind of say, did you get that? And if you then say, yes, I got it, then it's fine. But otherwise it should remind you again, because I don't know how many times I've tried it and I gave up quite quickly. So I said, if reminders, then I will just use it on a phone, because the chance to miss it is way smaller. But like I said, what I use it for, a little bit of music I tried here and there. But I actually think I want to try Google Home this time with the Mini or Max, because I think one thing that actually bothers me a little bit is the fact that the Echo Dot sometimes can't do pretty simple stuff. Like sometimes I just want to have a simple calculation, or I ask it a distance from somewhere to somewhere, or a translation. It fails on these parts. Translations it can't do properly at all. Calculations, really simple ones, yes, but not all that good. And I think what I usually use Google Home for, or Google, the assistant or so, is just ask for sometimes a direction. Usually I sometimes just want to know the distance from one place to the other, just so I know that quickly, or a little bit of some calculation, or maybe a translation. But that's where Alexa fails. So that's where I want to try to maybe see if Google Fit's actually better, because I don't need it so much for music, even though I've just got the 3-month trial period for Google Play Music. But I don't think I will use it much, because I never needed to, because that's not quite the music that I usually listen to anyway. So yeah, that's big. But let's get to the Pixels, and of course the 2 and the 2 XL. So what I think actually will be a very underestimated phone, or just not a phone that will get the appreciation that it maybe deserves, is the regular Pixel 2. Because why? It's not bezel-less anymore. It's not an infinity display. It doesn't have the biggest screen to aspect battery ratio. But what it has is a form factor that many people still like. 5 inches. I would still prefer a 5-inch phone over a 6-inch phone, in the case of the Google XL. Okay, it's actually kind of like 5 to 5.5 inches if you see the Pixel XL as the 2:1 aspect ratio and so on. And I've talked already about this. I prefer 16:9, but yeah, I would have really wished for a smaller bezel. But I also have to say the bezel on the top doesn't bother me so much. The button on the bottom, if it's in general, it just has to look fine, and I think both do. Especially the normal one, not the XL, has, at least it looks like it on the leaks, smaller side bezels, which are more important for me. So the easier I can handle one of these, the more I would tend to go for that. And the issue is, if it just would have been down for the size with the same specs and all that, I would definitely actually go for bigger bezels and then get the easier to handle normal Pixel 2 instead of the XL. But if I would have to choose, I think I would go for the compromise and actually get the bigger one, even though I don't like big phones so much, even though many prefer them. But the thing is just that the regular Pixel 2, if of course the specs and the leaks are true, has a few downsides. And I don't want to go too much into the one thing that I complained a lot about on the German video, the button placement. I think the button placement on Google phones is the most wrong, or the wrongest one, the worst ones that I've ever seen, because they just put the power button way too high up on top, and I don't get why. No other brand by now does this still. Pretty much everyone settled at about 55-60% of height of the device. The bigger the device gets, for some reason it gets higher, which is something that doesn't make sense to me, because if the device gets bigger, why does the button have to grow? Because the length of my hands didn't grow. So maybe because you hold a bigger phone different, but in most cases it's not that big so to make that difference, and I think it's weird. And For example, Motorola was a brand that did it wrong a long time, but they now have it at that kind of position. HTC has it, Sony has, Xiaomi, and pretty much all Chinese cheap phones already have it for such a long time. Also with the proper button placement, because I think the power button should be below, not above, way too high up on top the volume rocker. That makes no sense. It's not convenient. I didn't like it on any Nexus phone or any Pixel phone. It's just too high. It's not right. I think it's wrong. Especially for one reason. Because if you look at the leaks, and it was the case already on the other Pixel phone, for example, that let's say this would be the fingerprint reader. So not the camera, but just beneath. And usually on most phones, if you put the finger normally stretched out, you are at that place. It's maybe not super convenient because usually I have my finger here. But yeah, I totally get that position. Now, this is the position. And on Google phones, the power button is on the exact same height as the fingerprint reader, which would mean that my thumb, if it would be the same, would be, and it's actually a little bit hard for me to get, would be here. But it is not, because if you just look at normal hands, as you can see here, the thumb is not as high as the index finger. This is the index finger, right? It's just normal human physics. Is it physics? No. Physics. Doesn't matter. Because usually here is my thumb. And here is my fingerprint, the back fingerprint reader, if it would be. So this is not supposed to be on the same position. So why do they do it? Because with this way, the way that most phones do it, you have with the thumb, you have access to the power button, but also quite easy access to the fingerprint reader. But it just doesn't make sense to me to reach up from my normal position to reach the power button. So this is definitely something I despise on Google phones, and I don't know why they do it, since no one else does it anymore. Some have it higher placed, yes, but almost no one, at least not as close, has the height the same on both. Makes no sense to me. So that's something that I don't like. What I like though a lot actually is the front firing stereo speaker. If they keep that, that is nice. But getting back to the downsides of the Pixel 2. Just the 1080p display. I get it. If it is a 5-incher, it's still good enough. It's still sharp enough, since I didn't really complain about it on the Mi Mix that has a 5.99-inch display with kind of full HD. It is sharp enough. It's nice. But if you pay so much for a phone like 650, what is rumored for the lowest end model, I think this is... It's not quite the proper value that you should get. For this price, you should already get a 1440p display. I've not actually seen a 1440p display on a phone such as small. Okay, the closest one we got was the 5.1-inch display on the Samsung Galaxy S7, but that was right. That was better than a 1080p display. And that's why I think for the price, you should expect, and I actually think it makes no sense that they go, if the rumors are true, for an IPS display on the small one and for an AMOLED display on the big one. Because especially since Oreo will now introduce an always-on display, it makes no sense on the IPS display, and is one reason why I would not go for the small one, because I want to use this always-on display. I really like that feature. It's something that actually I would like to see on any phone by now. Due to having IPS displays, most don't have it, but I would actually be fine already with just a glance display, because on the OnePlus 5, I think it works so nice. You lift up the device and you see if anything had happened, some notifications or so on. So maybe they will actually do this on the smaller one compared to the bigger one, where it maybe will be always on, because they won't make an always on display on the small one if it's IPS. But yeah, like I said, I would like to have a higher resolution, even though it will be good enough. I won't really complain about it. I will mention it and I will be a little bit disappointed, because I think it would have been possible. Also, battery size. Let's get that into that. It will be still good, I think, because a 2700 mAh battery, which is rumored, for a 5-inch 1080p display with the Snapdragon 835 will do the job just fine. But I also have to say, is if I look at the size of the phone, other brands like Xiaomi or so that are way more space efficient, they scram into a camera battery of about 3300, 3400 milliamps in those size and in that size, and that gives you great plus battery life, and it will be maybe still be very good, especially with some optimizations on Android sides on the Pixel, and I don't think it will be bad. I think it will be really good, maybe even very good. But it could have been great, which I think the bigger one could achieve, because a around 6-inch display, 2x1, Snapdragon 845, 35 milliamp hour battery. That should give me a better battery life, I think, actually, compared to something like the Mi Mix 2. And that one already had great battery life. It should be, I would say, at least on half an hour, if not maybe an hour better, because we have a bigger battery. We have, it should be with AMOLED a more efficient screen, especially if you use a lot of blacks. And it should have the better resolution. So it makes kind of no sense if you want the best Google phone to go for the normal one, besides the size, because you make more compromises. You will have less battery life, I think. You will have more bezels, so a worse screen-to-body aspect ratio. No, screen-to-body aspect ratio makes no sense. Screen-to-body aspect ratio. No, screen-to-body ratio. Yeah, now we have it. So, yeah. Of course, performance will be the same, because you could actually think, that's what I thought actually a few years ago back. I thought if you have the same SoC, for example, on the Pixels, and you have just a 1080p device, and then on the other one a 4040p, the 1080p should be better, but it's actually not, because for the Snapdragon 845, even for the 821, it makes no difference if it's running in normal things, like besides maybe games, if it's running 1080p or 4040p. I actually noticed this also on, even more so on the Xperia XZ Premium, because it didn't really even noticeably, at least not significantly, get worse going from 1080p to 4K, which is 4 times the resolution. So yeah, everything points to the XL. Now, if I want to complain about the Pixel XL, yes, the bezels, the side bezels are quite huge, because I think they're actually even bigger. It looks like it, like on the Mi Mix 2 or on the LG V30. No one seems to have an issue on the V30. I don't get quite why, because they seem quite similar. Of course, I can't judge yet, but no one seems to have complained there. I did a little bit. I did complain also a little bit, or at least mention it on the Mi Mix 2, where it just looks quite big, but you get used to it. So I don't think it will be a huge issue on the XL, but it is a little bit of a downer. I would have wished for something a little bit smaller. Top and bottom is fine. I actually have no problem with a bottom bezel. At least the little one is fine. Top one looks also good, better than a notch in my opinion. And the height is actually something that I don't like. I don't buy as well. The good thing though is if the device is a little bit wider, it won't maybe be all that top heavy like some phones like the Note 8 are. And I will get into that later, because I don't think that's a good form factor. But yeah, otherwise, camera, I am pretty sure it will be damn good. I really liked it on the XL already, and I think it will be superb this time as well. It doesn't need to be a dual lens system, in my opinion. Dual cam, not necessary. They will make a great job. Otherwise, what else is to say there? Yeah, my gripe is the button placement. The boring UI, I think Android is getting better. And I would use a custom ROM anyways on the Pixel, for sure, if it would be my personal device. The rest though, yeah, design, personal preference, I kind of find it okay. It doesn't look quite as terrible boring as it did last year, so I'm fine with that. Stereo speakers, I'm happy to see that. Okay, I gotta mention it, no headphone jack anymore. Not a huge issue for me, but I know a lot of people will be upset, especially for the price. And one thing that actually surprised me a lot is that it's rumored that the Pixel 2 will be $650, and you will have to pay $200 more for the XL. That's a markup of $200 for the big one. And all other brands, Samsung, from the S8 to the 8 Plus, it's $100. From the iPhone 7, or I mean 8 to the 8 Plus, it's $100. So getting $200 higher is a little bit of a stretch, and I don't think it's quite fair. Not okay. $850 is a lot. And that's like $950 maybe, even, or if not $1,000 in Germany. Because Google lets the Europeans pay a lot more extra, more than some other brands do. Not a fan of that. Yeah, but let's actually go to the next topic. Yep, I've mentioned it already a little bit. Let's talk about the iPhone 8 and 10. I actually should have already talked about it in the last rambling, but I can't really say so much about it since I'm not gonna review one, never have reviewed one, so I can't really probably judge it. I can only judge based from what I see from other people, and I have to say, yeah, I think there's no need to deny that the design is super boring. It's the same for years already. Huge bezels, now due to glass being way heavier. But I've talked already so much about this in other videos, or I mean also in the German version, and I don't want to stretch it too much, actually keep it a little bit more on point. But I think it's actually a better phone than some might think, besides the design, if you get used to it, because some say it's just now faster and so on, and I'm way too tired to talk about the whole discussion about Apple now keeping or catching up on Android like 2 years ago. Because let's see like this, yeah, now we have fast charging. Everyone says, great, we had that since the S6, but you only had it on the S series, on the S6, 7, 8, and also on the Note series. On the lower end Samsung phones, you don't get it. You don't get it on Motorola phones. You don't get it on HTC phones. You don't get it on most other brands and LG and so on. On most brands, it's not a standard. But if you now get, now onwards, from the 8 and upwards, an Apple phone for the next 3 years, I think anything changes for the foreseeable future, I think they will stick with Qi charging or whatever, maybe better thing comes after, but it will support wireless charging, but you will have this as a constant. But if you buy, for example, if you bought a Nexus 5, which was I think the last phone that had quick charging, you bought another Google phone, you didn't have it on the 5X, I think, I'm not quite sure, because the Nexus 6P didn't have it. The Nexus 6 maybe, I think, had it, but also the 5 had it, but the Pixel didn't have it. So it's not even on the same brand, the given thing, and also not on the lower end specs, because you need to get a pretty much flagship and also just a few selected phones. So at least there you have it now if you stay with the phone, with the brand, but it's not the same case on Android side. So that's one thing, and other things I don't really want to even go about that. Battery life, yeah, seems to be poor on the normal iPhone. On the Plus one, it seems to be decent. I can't judge it all. I don't wanna. Performance is, I think, super great. I will be great. The display, yeah, it is lower res than most flagships these days, but I don't know. I think, Apple always did a great job with their super high quality clarity of the screen and so on. And I'm not complaining about the Mi Mix display, which is definitely, I think, not on the level of an iPhone display. So I don't think I would complain about it. I would mention it, but yeah, because so far I found them all very nice, especially, yeah. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into that. Camera will be great, I'm sure about that and all these kind of things, but it's kind of understandable why the hype is not that big, because everyone just sees the outer shell. The outer shell is boring, it's the same, but if you actually look what they improved, you have now a better cam, you have now the way better efficient, or let's say the way better performing CPU, dual speaker. I think we already had that before, and a few other things. Yeah, but like I said, I can't really judge it. But let's talk a little bit about the iPhone 10. And I definitely don't want to call it X, because they didn't, and why should we? It's the 10. Let's just accept it as what it is. What I have to say about that, side bezels. Those are crazy, because everyone just says that we have this new bezel-less iPhone. Yeah, top and bottom bezel are very small, but the side bezels are just about as big as on the top and bottom, and they are just too huge. Because whoever complained about the Pixel 2 XL leaks with big bezels, come on, be fair. The iPhone ones are just as big in my opinion. I can't really judge it. We have to see both side by side, but it looks like similar. Also V30, Mi Mix 2. Everyone complained about those side bezels. Not so much on the V30, I'm one of the few ones. But the iPhone 10 has huge bezels. I'm also not quite so sure about the in-hand usability, because with the swipe from so much beneath, because I've said this already on the German video, you won't hold it like this, because like this you can't possibly reach down below enough so you can actually make the swipe. So you will have to kind of have it more like I usually always use it anyways, with the pinky supporting the phone or just way more below, and you will have to make this swipe gesture, which I think will have to wiggle a little bit around. So I'm not 100% if this is all that great without a bigger bezel. I would have actually wished to have seen a bigger bezel so I have some room to swipe up from. It totally has to be seen once we have it in hands, which won't be the case for me. I just don't have access, and I don't buy an app or a device just to review it. I would not get the money from that to make up for the difference. And yes, my nose clogs every few seconds. I don't want to drown in my own snot. yeah, so it will has to be seen because I'm not gonna review it. And even if I would sell it again, I would lose money, man. I just don't wanna. I mean, I could also buy it and return it, but that's not something that I do for a long time anymore. Just don't think it's necessary. I don't want to do this anymore. I think it's not fair. So yeah, I think the iPhone 8 is a great phone. It will be underappreciated from many for what it actually can do. But I get kind of why the design kind of lost a lot of appeal for a lot of people, and the iPhone 10 is crazy expensive. And let's get actually to the few cruxes. Battery size is not a big, and actually I've talked already about this because if we talk about this huge quick charge thing where you have to pay like $85 to get quick charging, and there are maybe some other solutions and on, but I've actually noticed one thing: their quick charging isn't actually all that quick, because I heard something of about 50-60% in half an hour. But you have to remind yourself of the fact that, for example, the iPhone 8 has I think just 1700 or 1800 milliamp hour battery, and just for comparison, the Mi Mix 2 that I just reviewed has a 3400 milliamp hour battery, so that's pretty much double the size. And it takes 1 hour and 20 to charge. And that one also in half an hour charges up to about 56%. So it charges up to the same amount of percent, but you have to see that it charges twice the amount of battery in that size. So actually it's still, Apple's quick charge is like just half as fast, or Qualcomm ones is twice as fast as the one on the iPhone, if all those numbers are correct. Can't quite say about, especially about the bigger one, but yeah, so maybe the smaller one charges faster than the bigger one. Maybe it's 50-60% is for the bigger one, which then would be closer, but still you have to pay extra, which I think is definitely a kind of rip-off, because you can't tell me that they couldn't afford, because 85, I mean, yes, one of the few brands that actually charges so much for a quick charge is OnePlus, because there it's about 30 euros to get the dash charger if you want one more. Come on, that's 30. That's still like a third of that. And any other one, of course, on OnePlus sites, you get one in the box. But if you want one extra, usually you can really buy them specifically from those brands. But you don't need to. If I have a quick charge free device, a capable device, I can just buy for $5, $6, $10 a quick charger, and it does the job. So that's a lot cheaper. So if you already pay $700, $800, or $1,000 for an iPhone, it should be mandatory. It should be just a thing. You should not get such a crappy slow charger that I think they use for like 4 or 5 years already, which is just charging way too slow, at least from what I have heard from people and so on. So super disappointing. Sure, it's Apple's method. They can get away with it. People pay it, or they just don't have the feature. But it's not fair, especially if they announce this as one of the big new features and then they don't give it to you, because out of the box you won't see that. Because if you announce something on a keynote or on a release or a launch event, you expect to get what you see there, and you won't get it out of the box. Okay, I think that's enough. I don't really think I need to talk more about that. So let's just delete that topic and get to the Note 8. So I got it about 4 days ago. Don't have it yet as my review unit. It's still just the Zook 2. I need to get that out before, because they already complained a little bit about it. They set me kind of a limit of 7 to 10 days to review it, but they didn't ever tell me. So I said, if you want me to review it in 7 to 10 days, if that's kind of your limit, you have to tell me before. They kind of apologized and said, yes, it's okay if I take a little bit longer, but how can I expect? I told them I have so many other reviews to do. This is definitely not high up on my priority list, because this is a phone that's like more than a year old by now, so definitely not super high. But getting back to the Note 8, and I just want to keep this also very brief, and yeah, this rambling will definitely be shorter than the German version, because there I had still the energy to stretch these things apart. But you maybe don't get all what I said in there, but you get it way more compact, which is maybe easier to digest. But getting to the crux, here's my kind of already review, even though I haven't even started the review process properly yet. But the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, design wise, no, I don't like it. It's way too tall. the aspect ratio of 18.9 by 18.5 by 9 is actually, in my opinion, way worse. Even more so due to having a very narrow device, since we have the edges and therefore no bezels on the sides, which looks maybe impressive if the screen is on, but the phone looks so terribly long. It's so extremely top heavy, and it just looks awkward in my opinion, because if you check my Mi Mix 2 review, I have them both side by side. I just think, plain straightforward, the Note and also the S8 and S8 Plus, they look just wrong. Okay, design-wise, I prefer the Note still over the S8 and S8 Plus because I like the less rounded edges, so the smaller curve. But I also have to say that there are a few things. We have the curve on the front and back with the flat side on the side, which is a little bit weird because I would have wished for one whole curve like we have on the Xiaomi Mi Mix 2. That just feels way more comfortable in the hand, and it feels a little bit awkward. So I'm just not a fan of the design. We don't even have to go into the whole fingerprint reader thing, because it's so unreachable for me that I did set up just in the case I maybe can't get Face Unlock to work, because iris scanner is too annoying for me. I just don't like to properly look at it with the red angle and so on. That one has problems in the sunlight, which is not an issue for me. I have issues with the Face Unlock because it doesn't work in darker situations. And yeah, my voice is a little bit tired, a little bit clogged up. But I use my phones mostly in dark environments, and there it doesn't work. But the fingerprint reader is like two of these. I don't know how that's. It's not a knuckle. These two parts of the finger almost too far off from me. So if this camera would be the fingerprint reader, I maybe reach at best here. So I'm still far off, and that's why I won't even bother using it. I think it's a complete fail. And some say, yeah, now you have iris and now you have Face Unlock. It's not the same. A fingerprint reader at the moment is the best unlocking method. It's the most convenient one, still very secure and all that. So yeah. I don't even have to go into the whole thing about the Face ID on the Apple. That one works also a little bit, let's say, not to my thinking. I would have liked to have seen rather a fingerprint reader on the back, because Face Unlock, I don't think it's the best solution. I don't want to just look at the phone. And yes, it works in most cases if you put it up to your head and turn on. It works quite fast enough, but it's not nearly quick enough what I would like to have. It is slowing you down, definitely, especially if you turn your phone on very often. Otherwise, the display, no complaints here. Yeah, not a biggest fan of the resolution not being at its highest setting out of the box, so you will have to do that, and I did. That was the first thing I did check, and I think the difference from HD to 1440p is super noticeable. From Full HD Plus to 1440p Plus is maybe not that, or Quad HD Plus is maybe not that dramatic, but I simply don't want to use a phone limited. I don't want to use it capped. If it is a 1440p Plus display, I want to use it as that one and nothing else. So yeah. Sure, there are maybe different things why they did it. I think it's to save battery, maybe improve performance, even though it doesn't have to. Because performance, the Exynos chip or the Snapdragon 835, they don't really bother about it having running 1080p or 1440p. I've noticed this on the Xperia XZ Premium. If you use it in 1080p or 4K, there's almost no difference. And it's even way smaller if you go from Quad HD to 1080p. So that definitely is no reason. The performance would have been fine. Other phones with 1440p show this. The Pixel will show this. The HTC 11 shows this. Nokia shows this. That's not the issue. But the display, yeah, I gotta actually say it's not as extreme, oversaturated, or the issue that I had with it, the following, that in darker passages where we have a lot of shadows and so on, a lot of things get lost in the shadows, which they did on the S7, which they did on the Tab S3 a lot, and also on the S8 and S7. Doesn't quite seem to be the case now anymore. Maybe they improved things here with the calibration, I'm not quite sure, but it definitely looks way more pleasing. Super sharp, great viewing angle, super brightness and so on, that's nice. Yeah, still due to the edge, we have this color distortion on the sides, which I'm not a big fan of, the green hue and so on. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the edge screen in general, though. Don't like it because of my gestures and a lot of other things. Speaker, how did I call it? If I translate it from the German version, flagship crap or crap ship. No, but the thing is just, you pay $1,000, about that, €1,000 at least, for a phone with everything top end, and then you get a speaker that is even for an $200 or $300 phone maybe average. But the thing is, if it would be, and I always rate things on a neutral scale, so price neutral, and later on I measure in the price. But if something is good, then it's the same good on a $300 and $1,000 phone. So what I would call their good would be good as well as here. So it doesn't mean that, yeah, good now is to be expected on 1,000. That's something that I don't see. And if I have to see it as a whole scale, and I would give the speaker still a good, because it's quite loud. It doesn't sound well though. It's quite tinny, hollow. But I would still give it a good. So I will give it a good for that. But considering the price, then it's really bad, because it just doesn't sound high quality, which is poor. Headphone jack will be good. Performance, it's top. Yeah, there is something that I still don't like so much about Samsung phones, where they seem to be a little bit oversensitive to the scrolling. And then sometimes a little bit of weird, not really stuttering behavior, but odd behavior happens, and it doesn't feel just as fluid as on some other phones. So if they could get rid of that, I think lag also will happen a little bit, because I've already seen it on the S8, S8 Plus. So I think it will also happen on the Note. Some say it's not the case, but they don't have it long enough, and I'm not quite sure if I will use it long enough to experience that. I didn't have the issue a lot on the S7, because it was really bothering me enough, but it's something different now with the phone being so much more expensive now. I don't want to make this compromise anymore, because there are so many phones out there. Because back when the S7 had it a little bit of lag, most other phones had it as well. But these days, an HTC and Sony and Nokia, they don't have this lag anymore. So why should I hang around it if it's on Samsung side? I don't need that. Battery life, can't judge it yet, but I actually can't really judge the S8 Plus battery life so much, because I didn't bother to use that phone a lot. Never reviewed it. Had it, didn't use it a lot. Reviewed only the small one, but I think the battery will be okay. Where it will still fall short a lot, which is not an issue for the English viewers, especially not for the Exynos, for the Snapdragon version users, because I think it's pretty much a fact already by now that the Snapdragon is better for mobile data. At least on all Exynos Samsung phones, I had bad battery life on mobile data. There is just something wrong about it. I heard something that they use lower quality or just worse modems with less reception, and therefore they drain way more. Which would make sense, because on Wi-Fi the battery life of the S8, also on the S7, was actually really good. But once I go outside, it drains crazy fast. Super crazy fast. So since I don't hear that negativity from US reviewers or Snapdragon version reviewers, I think this might very well be it, and that's why I won't get great battery life at all. I don't expect that at all to be the case. Software, yeah, all is fine. Quickly about the S Pen. I can't do much with the S Pen. I never could. I just can't use Styly a lot, because especially on a phone where, as a lefty, the way I write, I need a little bit of some place where I put my palm on. On the phone, it's a little bit harder, and I can't draw, I can't really write properly, so for me, it's not a benefit. And yeah, I know most people now say, if you don't need the pen, just go for the S8 Plus, which, yeah, is legit. It kind of makes sense. I always say it's not that easy, but it actually kind of is. Because, yeah, you get a better inner field, you get a slightly better design, and also now better camera and so on the Note 8, but if you really don't have any use for the Note, for the S Pen, it really makes no sense to buy it over an S8 Plus. What else? Camera, yeah, it just will be great. I didn't actually try it yet, but just knowing from the S8, S8 Plus, also from the previous S7 and so on, it will be a ball to the walls cam. Okay, so what's my next topic? Because just to sum it up, I'm not a big fan of the phone, like I wasn't already with the S7, because the design kind of puts me off. I can't reach the fingerprint reader well. It's way too long. It looks weird. Okay, what I have to give it to, maybe that's just in my head, but the Note 8, it doesn't feel so hollow and kind of cheap anymore. At least now having it in hand, like it was on the display unit where I had it on IFA, and when I had the S8 and S8 Plus, they felt almost too lightweight, too cheap, too hollow. Maybe it's not really different on the Note 8, but at least it now feels to me like this. But in the end, for the price right now, I won't recommend it. I will maybe recommend it if I'm gonna say, if you need a Note for the S Pen, if you want a huge device, if you are okay with the aspect ratio, if you like Samsung phones, if you want the best camera, if you want their flagship, sure, go for it. But if you ask me objectively, subjectively especially, I would say it's just too expensive. You can get very, very close, and actually, the thing is, you can get way more balanced phones. You can get phones with a better in-hand feel, with a better speaker, with a better headphone jack, even better performance, battery life for sure. But the big thing is just the cam. Yeah, but okay. Now one thing that I've dragged actually quite a long time in the German one, and I'm not quite sure if I should do this in the English one as well, but the thing is the following. I got a comment today and someone said that he has a hard time getting my new rating system, even though it's not new. If you have seen the latest reviews, that I think I've used it just 2 or 3 times by now, with the summary part, where I post my rating scale. So this really good, very good, and so on. Just so you know what I'm actually talking about. So you will see this on the Mi Mix 2. I've done it on, I think, 2 more reviews. But the scale was always the same. I just now write it down for people to see, because some said that I have a hard time getting some differences between maybe a really good and a quite good and so on. But the scale in my head was always the same, and it didn't change. But what he said is that it's confusing. I told him how so, and he said that it's way too positive, because he says that only about 4 of those ratings that I had were kind of negative, and the rest all were positive. So I think, I'm not quite sure, I actually didn't count that, but let's say 4 negative ones, as he says. I didn't even check that. And let's say about 11 positive ones. But I said to him, that's for a good reason, because those 4 negative I pretty much never use. They are just unnecessary, because let's just see it as it is. The 4 negative points are poor or weak or disappointing and so on. Which phone in a single aspect is actually these days poor? All those phones, even the weaker ones, are still at least decent or okay or average these days. We don't really get phones, especially the bigger outlets that review flagships. We have no phone that has a terrible speaker. Because as you see it as what it is, it's still a good or decent speaker or a really good one. But I don't need those. So that's also the case why I told him I won't introduce what he suggested to make on 1 to 10 or 1 to 100% rating and a final rating. I won't do this, to keep it short, because I stretched this way too long on the German version. I won't make a final rating. I will get to why in a second. And I won't also introduce a percentage rating or a 1 to 10 rating, for the following reason. 1 to 10. Which numbers do you actually see in those reviews? Usually you see 7 from 10, maybe 6 to 10. That's the one usually get used, because phones usually just don't get ratings anymore from 1 to 5. So these are pretty much useless. So what you get effectively is from 6 to 10. And that's just 5 different categories where they judge a phone based on. But what I have, if I have 11 positive ones, for example, you have way more granularity. Of course, with percentages that would be finer, but that doesn't matter. But you see that I have more details, more granularity in those positive aspects where most of the phones fit. Because why should I emphasize? Why should I have the same amount of negative ratings as positive ones if I never use them? If I have something that is poor or if that's bad, it doesn't really matter if it's very poor or bad. If it's bad, it's bad. And it doesn't really come down. If it's bad enough to be a deal breaker, then that's already it. And it doesn't matter if it's like 5% or 10%. Below 30% is bad, or whatever it would be. But you don't really see those anymore. So why bother getting closer into that? And for example, a final rating, why that won't be a case is, and I've said this to him, I don't think he did understood it, because what he said is, for example, if he would, or if I would review an iPhone 10, and I would say because he said that the biggest important factor, that's a very subjective thing though, for him is the camera. So if the camera is great, the phone is great. And if I would, for example, review an iPhone 10 and it would get an fantastic in terms of the camera part, a phone like a Vico, which I never reviewed, and I don't know why he mentioned that, he said, according to my rating, would still get a good. But it's not. But he kind of forgets a lot of things or just doesn't mind, because he seemed very narrow-minded. Because first of all, he called me one of those YouTubers who like to sugarcoat, which, as most of you know, is definitely not the case, and that's what I told him, because based on one review that he saw from me, he can't possibly tell or call me a sugarcoater, because I'm way more negative than most. But first of all, I did not review any Vico phone yet, so even if that would have been good, you can't possibly, because that's actually the unobjective part, because he told me I'm not objective. But see, like it is. Yes, the iPhone 10 camera maybe is the best one, but just because that one is the best one, if you see it objectively, if the camera is good on the Vico, it is still good. Just because it's way worse compared to the iPhone 10, it doesn't mean it's bad, because it still can be good. The camera is bad if it's bad, but just because it's good, you also have to see the price, because he said you can't just always take the price as an excuse. I think at this huge price difference of about $1,000 and about $150 on the Vico side, you can't expect the same, because I mean, that's just simple logic. How possibly can a phone at $150 be anywhere close to a phone of around $1,000? Even though the iPhone might be overpriced at $1,000, it doesn't matter. But that's just not possible. And I also said, for you, maybe the camera might be the most important factor, what you base your phone on. And if the camera is good, but the problem is, for me, for example, the S8 has the best camera. Is it for me therefore the best phone? No, it's not. Why? Because I don't put a lot of focus on the cam. It's a very important factor for a lot of people, yes, but not for everyone. And that's something you just have to see. And that's why I won't give it a final rating. Because if I would go from my personal standpoint and I would say this is the best phone, because what is important for me, performance, battery life, in-hand feel, display, are the best, it's the best for me. But if the camera is maybe just good, for me, it still stays the best phone. But for someone else who the camera is important for him, it would be just a good phone. And therefore, I think it's just plain stupid, because I've seen it so many times. Two phones both get 8.5, but their strengths and weaknesses are completely not the same, because one has maybe a great camera, one therefore has the best performance, and whatever is important for you, then the difference of these two phones is big. And when I, for example, see those two phones with 8.5, I know them both, I definitely, from my standpoint, would not give them 8.5 in both aspects, because it's completely different. But what would be a 9 for me could be just a 6 for you, and vice versa. And I think that's why a general rating makes no sense, especially, for example, sites like Notebook Check. They also translate the reviews in English. In my opinion, make no sense, because, like I said already, the most narrow rating you see usually is from about 6 to 10. Let's say it in percentages, 60 to 100%. But most of their phones are at around, I think the best one that I've seen is 91, 92, and the worst one that you usually see is like 78, 77, maybe some really bad ones are at 73. But we are talking about a span of about, let's say, 78 to 91, which is just 13%. And everything goes down in those 13%. That's not nearly granular enough to tell you the whole story. Because if you just look at it, if you see a phone with 91 and then you see one with 84, percentage-wise this looks quite close. But if you see that that's on a whole scale, the difference is actually huge. But it doesn't look like it. But you get with a 90% phone so much of a better experience in most cases than you do with an 82%. Because I've seen so many average, okay phones, good phones that get around 78, 80%. And I don't think that's the proper scale. Why? I think the weight they put on different kind of categories is just off. Because if you nail the ones that give you a high percentage for the rating, you could just completely fail off in ones that I think are way more important, and the phone still gets a good rating. And if one phone, for example, is top on all aspects and it completely fails in one very important aspect ratio, it will still get a very high rating. But one that is maybe very consistent in all, but never ever in one great, it could get a very similar scale, but the phones don't behave the same. They are not on the same level. And with my rating, I think it's not perfect, definitely not, but I think it's way more fair. And he said it's actually harder, because if we would see a 80 point, 85% rating, he would know what he's up to. But I think that's misleading, because everyone who's lazy enough not to watch the whole review, this is actually more misleading. Because I'm not gonna say I don't do this, but if you usually check, you see, okay, 8.5, you know kind of roughly where the phone fits in. But for most people who are lazy, they just see the 8.5 rating, and another phone has 8.5, so they're on the same level. They don't really bother to check all the specifics, which could be right for him. And that's just something that I won't do, because someone could buy an 85% phone, but it doesn't have all the things good as he needs them to. Because I know there are a lot of people, they want the best camera, and then they need to look forward in a review. But I know also a lot of people, display size and battery size, so battery level or battery life is the most important part for them. So if they would buy a phone that is maybe just a 6.5, but it has the big screen and the huge battery life, that's important for them, and they need an 8.5. Because if you would see it like the easy, stupid way, 8.5, now of course it has to have a better battery life and better screen size or whatever. You kind of get what I mean. It can be misleading if you don't do the proper research, which of course you have to do on your own. But that's why I won't give final ratings, because what is good for me doesn't have to be good for you, and that's why I always say, check the summary, pick out the part that is important, and look what they are rated at. And then you can find the proper phone. Because it could be a phone that I personally maybe don't even like, but all the aspects that it has to fit for you are there, and you will be super satisfied, and that's the case. Yes, I definitely, of course, point out my subjective rating as well. But yeah, I think my rating isn't perfect, but I think it's actually more fair, more right. I think it makes more sense if you have actually an idea for a different rating system, because I won't go, like I said, to a final rating. I won't go into a percentage rating. I won't get into a stars or 1 to 10 rating. I think they are wrong. If you have a better suggestion, you can give it to me, but otherwise, if it's not something that really is completely out of the box, that actually makes even more sense, that no one else has thought of, I won't change it, because for me it makes sense. That's the way I always have judged phones, that I will keep on, because I get maybe like a ratio of, I don't know, I got maybe like a handful, maybe 10 people at best that didn't like my rating system so much, but hundreds of people who are fine with it. So yeah, definitely not worth it for me to change anything, and I don't see a point, especially since I think it's right, which is the most important part. Let's quickly talk about the Mi Mix 2. Let's really quickly talk about it, because this video actually got longer than I expected. No, let's actually skip this. Yeah, Mix 2. I will maybe make a few other videos to compare it with, just so you know where it actually stacks up, because I think it's a super nice device. It's definitely worth taking a look at. Like I said, for me, it's a great phone because the aspects that are important for me. But just so you can kind of base maybe where a flagship fits in maybe better for you, I will do that. But let's get to one thing that I also stretched quite heavily. And at first, I didn't actually want to even mention this. It will be kind of the rant of the week, even though I'm not planning to make it every week, about the invite. And like I said, I didn't want to mention the brand, but I don't think it's possible to talk about that whole story without the brand. So it's Huawei. So the thing is following. Yes, I'm salty. I'm a little bit pissed, actually, to be honest. Why? And I will get into that later. The thing is just, I badly wanted to get an invite to the Mate 10 event. And I know the invites have been gone out for like 6 weeks, so way more than a month already. And I think 3 weeks or so, I did something that I usually don't do, because it's not something that you usually do. You don't invite yourself or try to invite yourself. But I said, hey, this is my only chance to maybe get it. So I have asked the press agency if I could get an invite. And they straight up lied to my face, which is something that I'm really pissed about. I don't like dishonesty. I hate it. That's one of my big morals, and anything that is against it, I simply can't stand. Because they told me they don't really know how many seats they have left or how many invites they have left, even though this was like already a month later than all the invites have been already gone out. So they definitely know how they do. So I said, okay, fine, let's keep it as is. They said if something comes up, they will maybe mention it. Then I asked again a few days ago, and they said me the same thing once again. And this is just where dishonesty starts and where my anger starts. Because just tell me no. Because I know, and in the German part, I stretched quite a long time why I think this is the case. Because I'm not an influencer, I don't get quite the positive views that they want to get. I'm not in their shoes. I mean, I'm just not... I never talked personally to the press agency. I'm not good with them. I didn't kiss asses. I didn't do all of that. And I don't have the status yet. Even though I know that they have, knowing from a few other YouTubers that I've talked about that also got invites and so on, that they have their kind of favorites that they give an invite, even though they are actually smaller than me, then they maybe are less influencers, but they're positive influencers. Because I've said this already once again in the past, what is more important for a press agency? And I can't really fault them for that, but 1,000 positive views of 1,000, or let's say if a video gets 5,000 views and 4,500 see it very positive, or no, actually it was wrong this way. So if a very positive video just gets 1,000 views, this is better for the company than, for example, my video that gets maybe 10,000 views, but it's quite a negative one, because then they rather have 1,000 people seeing something very positive instead of 10,000 seeing something not that positive. It's if that's the case. And I definitely think I was too harsh on some devices. No, I wasn't too harsh. I think I was too harsh for them, what they think of it, but I wasn't too harsh, because the P8 Lite 2017, I gave it a super bad rating. I said don't buy it. I wasn't really impressed by the P10, and in general, if you know what I think about Huawei's 2017 lineup, it didn't really work that well. I didn't really like it so much. The Mate is something a little bit different. I think that one will be once again what I would have wished for to see this year already, but it didn't happen. So quite negative, and I definitely get that a press agency's job is to get the most positive press or media outlet coverage from everyone, and therefore they favor the more positive one. But I also think it's a little bit unfair. Of course, a bigger channel like a million or a blog that gets way more views than me should get higher priority over me. But when I get to know that way smaller YouTubers but more positive YouTubers get an invite, I think that's just not quite fair. I get it from their standpoint, and it's legit. But if you just see it as an objective viewer or completely objectively, it's not the right way. Because is it of help for you if you get more coverage from the positive ones instead of the ones that are actually objective and honest? And I can already assure you one thing: it won't have any impact on my rating on any following Huawei devices, especially something like the Huawei Mate 10. I think it will be a great phone, and if it will turn out to be, it will get a great rating. But I won't give it any sort of worse treatment because I'm really displeased with what happens with the press agency, because that's very subjective. I stand on higher regards on some press agencies than on some other ones, because I'm maybe not that popular or whatever. It's the reason. It doesn't really matter, because I definitely know there are two ways you can get more into them, where you can get more popularity higher up on their ratings, and it's quite easy. A lot of views, especially very positive views, that always helps, like I already mentioned. But also if you maybe meet them in person, get in contact with them on events and so on, and you just show yourself as a very sympathetic person, or I mean a nice guy, if they like you, talking to you, and if you like them otherwise and so on, and then you get in a good relationship, of course then you are a higher priority. If you never met them, like I, for example, I never talked with them, anything, I kind of get it. So you have to do it either way. I personally think the one with the sugarcoating is not the right way. If you get a lot of views and still are objective, that's totally fine. That's super legit. But that's usually less the case. Otherwise, how would you explain that a bigger channel like mine, compared to some smaller ones, and I'm not big, but gets the worst treatment? And yeah, if you are okay with the brand, that's okay. That's legit. I can't really complain about that. It's not how it should be, but it's totally understandable. And I gotta say, I actually already thought about it to say that I'm done with reviewing Huawei devices, because I was quite salty, but that's stupid thinking, because they still make great products. At least I think so, especially with the Mate 10. So why should I not review them? But the good thing is, since I now have Cyberport already for quite a while now, 2 years I think already, I don't have to go through the kind of shame of having to rely on them. I don't need to talk good to them. I don't need to hype the product. I don't need to do any of that, because back when my old content was still there, where I had a little bit more of a status, I think, so I got my review units from Huawei more in time, quite close to the release date. But it actually got worse since the negative review, since the P8 2017, the Lite, since some other reviews that I did, the P10 and so on. So I definitely noticed that, and it's not just in my head, it's just noticeable, because when it was like a month or a few weeks after release, now it's multiple months, and I don't need it. From Cyberport right after release, now I can get it. I get it way quicker, not quite as quick as I would get it maybe on an NDA like some do to review it, because it's visible. I've had already 2 NDAs for the Honor 6X and the Honor 9, where I could review it and release the review on the first day. And I've definitely noticed that those videos got more views, and would have gotten more views than if that wouldn't have been the case. So that's something we can't deny. If you are the quickest one, even though you maybe still won't get as much views as the big channels, you get more views than you would get otherwise. That's just the nature of YouTube. So a big channel still gets, no matter how kind of late he is, more views. A big popular great channel with just great content gets this as well. A smaller channel, yeah, has better chances if he's quicker. That's just unavoidable. But yeah, like I said, I am salty just because I don't think it's fair. And it's not actually the part that I wasn't invited, it's the part how they treat me, because there was one person and one other YouTuber that actually tried to get me an invite. And he said that the response was very cold, like they didn't want to talk about me. So kind of they knew who he were talking about, but he noticed that they kind of wanted to fade away from that topic, because I'm very low on their rating scale. Which, like I said, is understandable, but yeah. So they should just tell me, no, we don't want to give you seats because we have more popular YouTubers out there, or we have people that we like just way more that are more positive. Legit. It's a little bit of a burn at first, and you don't always want to hear this, but I prefer a hard, negative, just right or honest statement instead of a dishonest one, because I know when they tell me that they don't really know how many invites they have left still, that's a lie, because the invites have been gone out for multiple weeks already. And now, okay, if they say they don't know yet how many, then it could mean if maybe someone would cancel at last minute that they could put me in. But the chances are slim, and I don't expect to get an invite still, especially since it now would be too late, because the event is in about 2 weeks. If I don't know about it at least a week ago to make the plans for the trip and so on, it's too late for me. And I don't actually at all think it will happen, because if they would have wanted to invite me, they would have done it weeks ago. So I don't want to stretch this too much further. Like I said, I am salty. It won't have any negative impact on them, and I'm okay if this video would actually burn all the bridges to the press agency, because I don't have anything to expect from them anymore anyways, because if I didn't get an invite now at this size, at no point in time anywhere soon, I will get to a status where they just have to acknowledge me. Because if it's about 56,000 subscribers now, or 80, 100 or so, that doesn't change the fact. So if they didn't invite me yet, it won't happen anytime soon. And I don't get review units in time from them anyways. I can get them through other sources like Cyberport way easier, way quicker. Okay, not quicker as an NDA, but still, so I don't have to get my same through that shamed feeling that I have to kind of try, like, I think it's actually a little bit like humiliating that I kind of have to try it to stand good with them. I don't need it. I have enough self-respect that I won't go for that. So I kind of get where they stand. I kind of totally get why they do it. But I would just like to have open hands, so they should just tell me. That's kind of not expected too much, I would say. But of course, it is what it is. Like this super long rambling. And yes, I will do the same as I did already on the last few ones, just because I was actually always surprised of how many people do this. But I will tell you a word now. And this just shows me that you have watched the biggest part of this because you have watched this until this point. And I will take a different word than on the German one, just so I actually know from which version it is. So I will say steak. Steak. So if I hear steak, then I know it's the English version. And yeah, like I said, super long rambling, and like I said, also maybe the last one, or at least not a regular one as mono, just because I'm talking here for about 2.5 hours already, which would have been just half if I just keep it to one language, and I just have to set priorities. I always do all the reviews already for both sides, which is necessary. I've talked about it already. I'm not quite sure if it was in the German or in the English one, but the thing is just that the channel runs now mostly on the German part, because all the contacts by now, the newer ones that I got, are through just the necessity of making German reviews. So I still make the reviews on English just because they get me still the bigger amount of views, which is just, yeah, what keeps it growing. Of course, I think German grows actually quite well as well, but yeah. I'm totally exhausted by now. If you liked it, you know what to do. If not, I know. Yeah, but yeah. Let's just upload this, I would say.